This is an illustration of how the fourth law of thermodynamics interprets Nash equilibrium. This experiment, on a flock of ducks in a pond, has been done in reality. And then you see that the flock of ducks distributes itself in a way that maximizes the utilization of the available energy, as the Nash equilibrium calculates. Politically speaking, one can say that the ducks in the pond act in the most solidaric way. And they don't because they figured it out themselves. The idea here is that the Nash equilibrium describes mathematically what has guided life in evolution to become solidaric. We only see the result of the flock of ducks' collective behavior in the pond. A behavior that we would call being in solidarity with each other, or we could describe the situation as this: love triumphs over greed in nature. This experiment is described and taken from the book A Beautiful Math written by Siegfried. The fourth law of thermodynamics' further interpretation of the Nash equilibrium is to connect it to the universe. I connect the Nash equilibrium to the second law of thermodynamics. The second law of thermodynamics states that the universe was created with a limited amount of energy, which means that the universe is driven towards chaos, entropy, and the lowest possible energy state. What I propose is that the Nash equilibrium describes solutions in universal life, which lower the universe's energy state the most and are therefore rewarded with fitness in relation to the alternative solutions. But this can only work in the state of chaos. Or it must require a certain degree of chaos, to what extent I do not want to speculate, for the Nash equilibrium to work. And to create natural chaos, the situation requires the context to be limited amount of energy, as this universe is. What I'm trying to say is that fourth law of thermodynamics sees Nash equilibrium as the mathematical path of solutions that show the way to the ultimate goal of the universe, when no lower energy states exist. The universe's goal to find the universe's absolute lowest energy state, as there are no lower energy states to achieve. This state should be able to be expressed as EU equals 0, energy in the universe equals 0. Then I put that state in context with the state of paradise. Then the love we see in the ducks in the pond will be 100% pure. The little bit of love we see in the flock of ducks will then be pure, when energy in the universe, EU, equals 0, when the universe has no lower energy state to achieve the universe's full potential. So this principle is the fourth law of thermodynamics' further interpretation of what the Nash equilibrium can mean, now set on a universal scale. Which essentially means that the Nash equilibrium describes the fourth law of thermodynamics, EU, 0, paradise. In this illustration, I put the Nash equilibrium into this universal context. What is quite special about fourth law of thermodynamics' interpretation of Nash? The interpretation that takes Nash equilibrium into a universal context. This is illustrated here in a simple way, where these dots describe life, the flock of ducks in the pond, for example. The flock of ducks has then been forced by the universe, due to the chaos, to have to find the solutions that were already there described by the Nash equilibrium. The Nash equilibrium has already defined the solutions, and that those solutions simultaneously represent the lowest universal energy state. Or the Nash equilibria probably then describe the path that leads to the universe finding EU equals 0. So I guess that when the universe has found its absolute lowest energy state, will be when love has found its maximum potential. Fourth law of thermodynamics puts the solutions in the Nash equilibrium in the context of love, at the same time as it represents the lowest possible energy state. While evil actions and intentions such as torture are an unnatural activity, because it requires more energy than the alternatives, good solutions. So if the universe had been a place with too much energy, then this dot would be able to move upwards. And then evil qualities would have accumulated, instead of good qualities as in this universe. Due to the limited mass energy universe. At the bottom of the illustration, the point is simply that all life in the Universe only has one task: to turn mass energy into love and intelligence. According to fourth law of thermodynamics, life in the universe has only one task: being a catalyst whose purpose is to turn mass energy into love and intelligence. As then in paradise the state will be 100% of the potential of this universe, or a perfect place, with regard to love and intelligence, as seen from a creator of this universe. So by bringing the principle down to earth again, and all the way down to the quantum level, I suggest that we see the 4th law principle in the wave-particle duality. That nature has a relationship with universal energy states and the properties, good and bad qualities. Where nature determined this pattern in advance, already when the universe was created. So right from the start fourth law of thermodynamics was integrated in the universe. That good properties were put in context with low energy states, because it requires less energy, and that evil properties were put in context with what the universe feels as high energy states, because the process requires more energy. And that is where the problem of evil qualities comes in this universe, because nature is constantly seeking in the opposite direction than what evil qualities require. But inside modern governments, pockets or closed systems can now be created, which are created by the population being forced to give half or more of what they earn into these closed systems, deep state. If you look at money and food as energy, the state, abundance of energy will be the condition. Inside these pockets, which the people inside the state apparatus must deal with, it will be unnatural, constant abundance of energy. According to fourth law of thermodynamics, the filter in nature that has constantly prevented evil traits from developing in the selection process is disappearing inside these pockets. According to fourth law of thermodynamics, it will become natural that evil qualities will be stronger than good qualities, inside these closed pockets, pockets with constant abundance of energy. According to the fourth law of thermodynamics, inside these pockets, evil qualities will start to be selected over good qualities, as a natural result of fourth law of thermodynamics. I suggest that it is the same thing we see unfolding in the wave-particle duality experiment. That this strange phenomenon is also due to fourth law of thermodynamics. Why should the quantum wave be excited into particle form, just because we humans try to observe the quantum wave? But what we observe is actually nature itself. So if nature has an ego that it has to protect, an ego that we and other animals on Earth have, if we imagine that nature itself also has an ego, even if we don't see nature as a person, so when we start looking at the smallest components in nature, then we look in a way then, the ego of nature. Then I suggest that nature will mark this with how the universal state of energy responds to our attention, directed at itself. The energy state will be raised. And then nature / universe will record it, because we are more evil than the creator of the universe. One can say that the creator of the universe actually represents the paradise in fourth law of thermodynamics. That is, 100% love and intelligence is what probably holds power in this universe. And also in any parallel universes. According to the fourth law, what is most likely is that it is good that has the ultimate power in this world. And then nature will be able to experience our attention as worse than itself, which will be experienced as a rise in the energy state of the universe. One can imagine that the universe has extremely sensitive sensors that can measure changes in energy states, right down to the quantum level. When we try to observe the quantum waves of nature, we raise the energy state, we actually add energy. Not because we have such evil intentions, but because we are more evil than nature / the creator himself. We add energy because we are more evil relative to nature as seen by the fourth law, relative to paradise. So our observation and interference, that is where the energy comes from, the energy that excites the quantum wave into particle form. In this illustration we are back at the universal level again. We have zoomed out, one might say. The most interesting thing about the fourth law is not really wave particle duality. Rather, the universal will that lies behind the fourth law. This with the fact that the universe is on its way to paradise and that good will win. But why doesn't nature stop ugly things? If nature / creator is so good? That is the classic question in theology. Again I refer to the ego of nature. I see nature as quite brutal and indifferent really, myself first. What will matter to the ego of nature, if nature has an ego, is how much risk. Universal life takes in the struggle for existence, just as an owner of a casino must think. What if this life manages to remove all risk? That life in the universe manages to kill each other without leaving a trace. What is called the perfect murder? If life in the universe manages to achieve the perfect murder. That is to say, life that keeps up the struggle for existence, completely risk-free. It will be a problem for nature, if nature has an ego. Because the first life forms to achieve completely risk-free strategies. They will then try to dominate nature. They will become a competitor by nature, a natural enemy you could say. What is interesting about this in relation to fourth law of thermodynamics is that this risk level is put in connection with energy states. Because if we are to be able to remove risk in life, we must first remove the chaos. In such a way that we get to lock down all degrees of freedom so that we can decide the outcome ourselves. Of a competition, for example, determining the outcome in the struggle for existence without risk. Then they must first remove the chaos around themselves. And then we are back to energy contexts. Removing the chaos is done by first creating an energy context of constant abundance of energy. And that only evil can do this, remove the chaos. If nature uses energy states to distinguish good from evil. Because the fourth law says that evil is what you will find in the energy context, constant abundance of energy. They will be the ones who feel the most comfortable there. And like it, it will feel attractive to be able to compete without risk. It is a kind of greed, one might say, more greed than nature can accept. It will of course be attractive to most people to lower the risk, but now we are talking about lowering the risk in an unnatural way. Such that you start to cross the line of what nature defines as the evil side. Or as a rival, or natural enemy of oneself. That illustration here shows that when any life in the universe achieves zero risk, that's when nature sets the limit for when it stops evil. And can explain why nature / universe doesn't seem to care as long as the risk is higher than zero. And nature is in control, ensuring that the owner of the casino does not lose. By the way, it is interesting that the realization of zero-risk strategies in life probably coincides with life having become advanced enough to travel out into the universe, and spread its properties into the universe. Then life has probably also become advanced enough to achieve zero risk in the struggle for existence. As if the universe gets quality-assured life for evil qualities before the life form is allowed to spread further in the universe. So to this last illustration. Now we are down on Earth again, down to our human level. That is what is most interesting to us. That's how the fourth law of thermodynamics, which is a universal law, explains things that happen at our level. In the illustration here, you can see the order that must be followed for evil qualities to develop, according to the fourth law. Number 1. The absolute first mover that everything must start with is constant abundance. You can't just start with evil traits. You can't just start with the lie either. In order for the two things to be cultivated, you must start with constant abundance. You must start with the energy context of constant abundance of energy, which will be an unnatural state in this universe. But as we see now, in modern human time on Earth, in this place in the universe, then we can see that we manage to create pockets of constant abundance in which life can compete. Then we are talking about the modern systems, especially in the West then. Deep state in the West where the populations are forced to pay a lot of what they earn into another system. Just like in Norway, we have 50 to 60% taxes and duties which they collect all the way. Then you will create, especially in combination with a low population, a situation of extreme abundance within the authorities there. Then fourth law of thermodynamics says that it is scary because the situation tends to breed evil qualities. But probably the process goes through these three steps. First comes the constant abundance, 1. And then you can start cultivating the lie, 2. Because they still have to fool the others. They cannot just start by being evil because then the others, who have not become evil, will react. There is still chaos on Earth. It is approximate 7 billion people on Earth, so the chaos has not been removed on Earth yet. So evil qualities are then completely dependent on camouflaging themselves, and are therefore dependent on step number 2, the lie. Evil qualities, evil intentions, are then dependent on camouflaging themselves as goodness. And with constant abundance, it will presumably be easier to lie. You become less critical of whether something is a lie or not, because you have food and security. If everyone has plenty of food, it will also be safer, bread and circuses. The scary thing about this is that it will also become easier to lie, for those who want to lie, camouflage. And evil qualities have the greatest need to lie. That is what fourth law of thermodynamics suggests, that it is precisely then, in constant abundance, that evil qualities will be cultivated. Because the lie has become so effective. And then here, until the very end, a kind of conclusion, or overview, of the fourth law of thermodynamics. As said, fourth law is really the law of the universe. It is not our law. But I suggest that we can use the fourth law to create joy. And that we should be happy that the universe is programmed to end in eternal paradise. Then it is not so unrealistic and we too can get to paradise, even if the whole universe is not there yet. Because if we become part of the ego of nature, if we play on a team with nature, one can understand the feeling of not wanting to be slave to nature and the desire to dominate it instead. But then you almost just have to accept that what created this world got here before us, before our egos got here. So I think more like the smartest thing is to cooperate with nature. And accept that the one who created the world has the power. And don't really want us any harm either. And especially not if it turns out that nature will reward our efforts with paradise in the eternal future. Then suddenly this is a very good deal. Then it is no longer the case that nature throws us aside after God has used us. Then it actually is that God loves us, that nature loves us. But it's just that the one thing we haven't seen yet is that the reward behind the wall is eternal paradise. But as this mathematical approach to the question, which is fourth law of thermodynamics, we can use it to see paradise. Although we are not there yet. Then there are 3 articles that I have written about fourth law of thermodynamics. It has been written on my own initiative and one cannot expect university standard from the articles. But I have an education in the subject, so I believe that the articles have a sustainable scientific standard. And then there is this with higher life forms. It applies to the second article, a new view on dark energy and the expansion of the universe. That article addresses that. It proposes that the reason the universe is expanding at an increasing rate is the presence of higher life forms. The article says that it is because the fourth law also works in the rest of the universe, that life elsewhere in the universe has progressed further than us. Because according to the fourth law, life should only continue to develop at an exponential rate, as the graph illustrates. Because the task of all universal life should, according to the fourth law, only be to convert mass energy into love and intelligence, described in the irreversible expression, EU-0-paradise. Only that we humans have to wait approximate 20 years before we can have a new generation. Then we have to wait another 20 years until we can have, for example, 3 to 4 descendants. Whereas at these higher levels, see graph, which may be 2 billion years ahead of us in evolution, they will probably act in a completely different way. Because the task of life is to turn mass energy into love and intelligence, then these life forms will perhaps reproduce with 100 billion offspring, per unit of life, per millisecond. And then you can imagine that this process, life form, will manifest itself as changes in the physical universe regarding mass energy, Because of the role of life, EU-0, paradise. Will they, like us, but more slowly, convert energy into a third form, love and intelligence? The article says that these life forms will affect how much mass energy works in the universe. Since this process according to the fourth law must be exponential. For these life forms governed by the fourth law, this is what may be what drives the exponential expansion of the physical universe. So the other interesting thing, if these more accurate life forms exist, as they probably do according to the fourth law, is that these life forms should be able to copy us. Copy us over to formats of eternity which do not require mass energy, but which can exist in a mathematical form, as in an eternal state of paradise. Then comes the question of eternal paradise and our eventual reward from nature/God. So instead of seeing ourselves as slaves of nature, slaves of God, or slaves of chaos, we can now rather see a reward.